you been married?
32 years.
Congratulations,
Thanks.
and what a testimony. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
32 years. My wife just turned 19 and I married her and took her to Brazil and we lived there for 4 years together.
4 years in Brazil.
Four
What?
years
How
in
did?
Brazil.
What's the backstory on that? Did you have no people there? Was it?
No, we didn't know anybody there. Actually, that's not true. We knew a couple people there. I was working with General Electric at the time. It was the aircraft engine group. It's called GE Aviation now. And I was a field representative for them. It was my first job out of college. I loved it. It was just a lot of fun. And I took the job when I was single, and I'd known my wife Tabby for quite a few years. I've been family friends, and so I had known her since she was 12. But obviously, it was years later before we got married. But I was on an assignment in New York at this time, and I was going to be going to Brazil, being moved from New York to Brazil on a new assignment. And Tabby and I had kind of reconnected and things like that. But we ended up getting together and starting the dating process. And then I moved to Brazil, and we got that was in August of 1990, and we got married in, let's see, is that right? Yeah, August of 1990. No, wait. I moved to Brazil in June of 90, I think it was, and we got married in August of 90. And then I took her back to Brazil. So I was there a couple months by myself. And so I was there on an assignment with GE.
All right.
Yeah.
Here's a
Turned 19, left her family, never been out of the country, went to Brazil with me.
wow. So she saw
So
something in you that she trusted.
I guess so. And she's a wonderful lady. She's just an angel, honestly. I mean, she really is. She's the sweetest person I know. And she keeps me. I tell everybody, look, if it's a joke, but not totally. Part of jokes and what makes them funny is there's a stream of truth in them, right?
Oh yeah.
But I tell my friends, so I'll tell all of your friends that um, if it weren't for me, we'd have no money, and if it weren't for Tabby, we'd have no friends. So
Truth
we're a
bomb.
good we're a good team.
That's exactly how I feel. Like I'm relating to so much of what you're saying, Dale.
Yeah,
Like we would not be social at all if my wife Rachel wasn't scheduling people to come over or just doing things. I'd just be at home. I don't even know what I'd do. I'm just
yeah.
glad I have her. So that's awesome that you have Tabby.
No,
Um,
she's a beautiful person.
was there? Can you remember back? Like, was there any kind of filter you were looking for when you were choosing a wife? Just real quick.
Yeah. Well, my filter was that we had to be, she, she had to be as committed to, you know, following God's example as I am. I mean, that was a non-negotiable. Um, and the other is they, whoever it was, had to have a heart for serving people, um, and just not an easy person to get along with. I mean, I think one of the most important things that couples can do um, is to simply um, be gracious and courteous to one another. And I don't remember where I heard this, but it stuck with me. Where credit was due, but I didn't make this up myself. Um, but I think it's very true, um, and that is that, of course, men and women are different, and women need, generally, what they need most is they need protection, communication, and affection. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Men, on the other hand, we're much more crude. We tend to need. I mean, this is maybe a kind of a raw truth here, but men, by and large, more we need respect, food, and sex. And if you get those three things, I know it sounds a little harsh maybe, but it's true.
Yeah.
And you know, that's a really important thing. And that's what I told my sons before they got married is just remember, that's it. And as long as we do it that way, marriages go a lot better. I know it's very traditional and things like that. And for a lot of people, that's just, not something they like to hear, but we don't always like to hear the truth.
Well, there's things about the truth that are so good is that if it is true, like our faith, God does put design into like the world. And so for us to like find that design and be like, you know what, I wanted to do this, but really what works the best is this is how a guy thinks. This is what he needs. This is what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
Finding that and living in that just, it to me makes life easier. I know, I mean, it's difficult being married just in general, right? Because women just are wired differently. I'd say designed differently.
Mm-hmm.
We are designed differently, and so no, I appreciate you adding in that little
Well, that's
bit.
exactly right. And Jeff, the thing too that I believe is super important here is that I've learned that the number one cause for problems between two human beings, and certainly husband and wife, but it could be in a business relationship with a client or anything like that. The number one cause for broken relationships, I believe, is unrealized expectations. And when you enter into a friendship or a relationship that might be a marriage or anything, if you think about it, there's certain expectations that are set. And certainly that happens in business because we have a contract and we go through this contractual negotiation process. And then those expectations are all written out and spelled out very clearly. But then outside of that, we have expectations that we've placed on other people that they oftentimes don't even know about. And that can cause problems because now we have this expectation, but it's probably going to be not realized because the other person, not only did they not know about it, they certainly aren't going to agree to it, or they didn't agree to it. For example, I might be sort of conjuring up and picturing this dinner out with Tabby, and and I've thought through this all myself, but then I don't realize that she's having a horrible day and she already has something else planned, and whatever the case might be, and I get home and announce, hey, let's go out for dinner, and she says no, and I'm upset and disappointed. Well, I've allowed myself to set this expectation in my head because of my thinking that she knew nothing about. And so it's unfair to be anything except accepting of that and respectful of where she is and what she wants to do at that time. And that often doesn't play out like that. Um, but then sometimes we have expectations between people that we felt like we talked about it, we agreed about on it, and everything was fine. But maybe we didn't ask the right questions and look at it from different angles to make very, very clear that we do understand the expectation. Um, and then the other challenge is that over time expectations drift apart. It's just um, the law of thermodynamics, right? The law of entropy. Things sort of just crumble unless they're managed very carefully, and expectations are one of those.
Man, that's really good. So when I hear what you say, I go back to kind of my firefighter training, which is like that's kind of a breakdown in communication too, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if she's feeling one way, you're expecting this other thing. Um, it's like you have to have some mediums and of communication so that we can let each other know. And that, just to be clear here, I think that's one of my wife and I's like biggest things we struggled with was trying to communicate. So you're right on, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it was, we just quit communicating. It was like all in my head what I wanted and expected. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought she knew for some reason. And I don't know why I even would think that way.
Yeah, we too often expect our wives and you know significant others to read our minds, and
That is not happening.
it's not going to happen.
And how that relates to the fire service is like every like mistake that we make, like if we have a big incident, like we would go back and there's this after action review, and you just talk about, well, kind of what was good, what went wrong, so we can learn. And I'm telling you, I think it's 100% of the time there's a communication breakdown. Like, you just,
Hmm.
nobody told that person this. And it's, the more I talk to people and couples, that's the same thing. It's like there's just a communication breakdown in a
Hmm.
marriage. So, uh,
Yeah, that's almost always the case. And so, what causes the unrealized expectation is poor communication. It was either never set properly or set at all, or the expectations went different directions because life intervenes, we forget things, different things happen to us, and we adjust the expectation a little bit, but we don't let the other person know. They adjust it a little bit and don't let us know. You add those two things together, and now we're over here.
yeah,
And when a certain event triggers it, boom, it all blows up. And then the communication even gets worse because then our reptile brains take over, and that ain't cool. That's
yeah. And we just,
not a good
nothing good has
situation.
happened at that point.
Right.
I've been there, just to be clear and honest. So what was it like raising boys?
For me, it was a lot of fun. I have not had the privilege of raising a daughter. I wish that I did. Um, but we have two daughters-in-law now, so that's very nice. We're loving that. But it was fun. Boys are boys. They're rowdy and everything. And we we wrestled and played a lot and done all those kind of things and made Tabby very nervous. We lived in a Cape Cod when I raised with the boys, and we would at that time they were very into wrestling. And I'm not exactly sure what inspired all that, um, we often played that game where I would get on my knees in the middle of the room and they'd get on each corner, and they had stage names and everything. I think Nathan was The Rock, and I don't remember the other one. They could tell you what it was
That's
because they have
awesome.
fond memories of this. And I would use the let's get ready to rumble thing. I would make it very theatrical for them, and they would come at Dad and try to, try
That's
to
awesome.
take me down and stuff like that.
Dads take note of that one. That's a little nugget right there, just for a good time. Was playing with your kids and doing that stuff kind of natural for you? Because speaking to, there's a broad spectrum of how men, raise their children, but was that kind of
Hmm.
a natural thing playing? Or I
Yeah,
feel like I grew up in a home where I don't think my dad played much,
yeah,
but
we played all the time, and
yeah,
I don't know, you know, I don't know what I don't know as far as other experiences. My dad was he was not super playful, but he was not distant either. I mean, I can remember sitting in his lap and things like that and watching TV with him and all of that. My dad was an outdoorsman and a hunter, and so I'd go out and do those things with him. Not that I was that into it, really. I love
sure.
the outdoors. I wasn't much of a hunter like he was, but I would do it more than anything just to be able to have time with him. And I can remember being on his back with my arms around his neck, and he was carrying me through these big, tall weeds that for me were over my head, but now they'd be about, maybe waist high. And I have very vivid memories of that. And I was probably, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 years old, probably 4 or 5 years old, maybe. And so, but yeah, we played constantly. We were always wrestling and jabbing and jousting with one another and things like that, respectfully. They knew where the lines were and things like that. Drove Tabby crazy because she wasn't used to all the rowdiness. She had one brother. There was 8 of them,
Oh
and she
wow.
had one brother. And so it was a female energy in her house, a male energy in ours, and it was pretty rough and tumble. And she would run us upstairs, and we'd go up like 3 kids and wrestle and play together. And she said it sounded like elephants fighting up there, and she'd get all nervous and concerned that somebody would get hurt, which did happen occasionally.
Sure.
But as guys, what do? You kind of gather around and you make sure they're not bleeding from an artery and tell them to suck it up. It's only a flesh wound. Get back in the ring again.
Yeah, round two's coming. You better get back.
Right. That's right.
Oh,
I
that's
don't know. Maybe
awesome.
that's why the oldest is an EMT now. I don't know. He's a
Yeah,
medic.
he had the years of fixing wounds, bandaging things back when he was a kid. So,
Right. Maybe
oh,
that's
that's
it.
awesome.
No,
So
I
they're
think it's
both in
important.
the workforce. Sorry, do you have? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's important to, to interact with the kids that way,
Hmm.
um, I think it's important. I know a lot of, or I know men in my life who either didn't have a dad growing up, which was a big hole for them, or had a dad who was very distant and very disciplined and maybe not that emotionally, I don't know, maybe not that emotionally intelligent or something, or just insecure. I'm not sure where that comes from, but I know it has a negative impact on sons, on boys.
Yeah. So yeah, you would encourage people to, yeah, make sure you play with your kids.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I just, you know, there's just slumps that you get in when you're hustling and you're the
Mm-hmm.
head of house. You're trying to earn money. You're trying to like, and if you're an entrepreneur, like who knows how many like endeavors they're really trying. Sometimes and entrepreneurs don't just pick one and go. They're like
Mm-hmm.
doing 4 or 5 things at once, and family can really get jeopardized in that. So
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, there were plenty of times that I can remember when, especially the youngest, Nathan, both really, but they would come in with the ball glove and the ball, throwing the ball in the glove, and I'm on the phone. There's one job I had way back in 2000, so over 20 years ago. That was just a miserable job that I had, with the exception of a great boss, but everything else was really not fun for me. Um, and I couldn't, I mean, I could, but I elected to stay focused on that because it was an important breadwinning activity and it wasn't that secure. And I had a lot to demonstrate and to show to the people who were signing my paycheck. And it really got old. So I ended up leaving that for that reason. But I said no a lot of times that I know hurt their feelings.
yeah, I think it's a fine line, really, because
Mm-hmm.
there is some hustle that needs to get put into earning money, like in
Mm-hmm.
whether it's seasonal or whatever projects are coming due or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and holding on to consistent good relationship with your kids, and
Yeah, one of the best things that I've read in a while, Jeff, is the book by Gary Keller called The One Thing. I think I've probably told you about it,
yeah,
but I'll never forget. I'm probably not going to quote this exactly, but I'll never forget the thing he wrote in the book was, um, when you're focused on the a particular thing like your work or a project or building a business or whatever it is. I'll try to get this right. What he said was, it's important that when you go out on the skinny branches on something like that, to make sure that you don't go so far out that you can't find your way back, and that you don't stay so long that there's nothing left for you when you do return. And that really was impactful for me to read that in that book. So I would encourage, I don't know Gary Keller. I've got no skin in the game here to promote his book, but it is a great book. The One Thing. It's very good.
yeah, that just reminds me like something I just like to say is that like what if you were able to get so successful in business, like, but at the end you look back in 20 years and you don't have a family, like you're divorced, you're kind of estranged to your kids, or you're not close with them. Like, did you really win? Was that really worth it? Or you don't
Mm-hmm.
have faith. There's just a lot of ways that we as men, I think we can lose in life. Like you lost, like you don't have the best life. Like you do want to maintain faith. You want to maintain the family that you have. And I mean, if you have to go through that circumstance, like, yeah, there's redemption and you can do the best with the, rest of your life. And, or if you have to get remarried, but still, I think that's what is that quote is kind of leaning towards, like, you don't want to
Yeah.
get to the end and you don't have them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I, I like nice things like anybody.
Yeah.
Um, I value that. I think it's great, but I don't value it as much as I do what I think is the most important thing outside of a relationship with God in this life, which is, um, they're the trust relationships we have with other people. That's the most valuable thing for me, because in the end, that's all you've got, all you have. I mean, if you've got, let me put it this way: if you got a call from the doctor and the doctor said, Jeff, Dale, you've got 24 hours to live, man, none of that stuff matters. I mean, all those projects and all those, all those clients you're chasing and the job you're trying to get and all that kind of stuff. And suddenly it doesn't matter. What does matter are the people who you love and who love you. That's it. That's all that matters. You just want to be around them every minute that you can until your last minute. And so it's a pretty good litmus test, really.
That's powerful. If you like that clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. If you want to watch the entire interview, click right here.